right. Hey, welcome to the Urge Processor app. We're so happy you're here. My name is Mike Frazier. I'm a psychiatrist, and I work together with my co-founder here, Sam, to create this program to help us overcome urges and, in particular, pornography.
Yep, so today we're just going to dive right in. Once you open up the app, you'll create your account. And once you do so, you'll be brought to this first page. First things first, right? Just taking steps to improve your self-control, just starting it off with what urges we're working towards overcoming. Today, we're going to just use the example of overcoming pornography use.
So yeah, you'll just type in there, overcoming pornography. Now, this is an important concept, right? And maybe Sammy can kind of explain this idea about how you want to use these. We're talking about pornography in particular.
Yeah. Knowing as far as it goes, living your integrity, it's crucial in overcoming those urges. If you know how you want to use, your sexuality, especially with pornography use, then you're more likely to live that integrity.
Yeah, great. So it is, as an example, you have your sexuality, and then you decide, like, yeah, I want to use this to connect with my wife. Was for me, and for Sam, it was what was your Sam?
Yeah, it was to connect with my future wife.
Yeah. So you use that as kind of a standard. Okay, if I look at pornography, is that helping me use my sexuality to connect with my wife or my future wife or not? And that becomes your filter instead of like outside filters.
Right.
So you'll create your own statement that helps you with that. So now we get into when you actually notice that you have that desire, right? And so what do you do next year, Sam?
Yep. So biggest thing is writing down and being aware, knowing what you're feeling, right? So you'll just write down in this bar on the top just what feeling you're experiencing as you feel that urge. So especially with pornography use, a lot of the time what I was going through was arousal, right? Arousal is a big feeling, and once you do have you've named it, then you can start to describe that feeling to dive into it. And as you do, it will give you more power. You'll be able to be more present in feeling that. So we're just going to go through actually just one that I've done in the past, an actual urge. So there was arousal was the experience that I was feeling myself, and the feeling as far as it went was in my body, is in my chest a lot of the time. And it was red, it was hot, as well as it was kind of fluid, right? You want to do the more description that you have, the better. That's what I noticed. And as far as it goes, the more you dive in, the better it can go.
Right. So then, you get a hold of it, then you allow yourself, to feel it. We talk about it like diving into a wave instead of trying to like fight against it or ride it out or whatever. Right. Um, and then this is the hard part. I was just sitting with it. Or one thing that helped me was actually trying to make it worse. So like if I'm feeling angry, but I feel it in my chest, oh, like I feel that red hot, can I make it worse? Can I make it more red? Can I make it more hot? And it is based on something from Viktor Frankl called paradoxical intention. When you try to do it, it actually gets a little bit less. So that was a helpful strategy I've used for myself. Um, and you can also play a calming sound if that's helpful for you during it.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's the whole piece, right? And I mean, we go to these urges just to escape our feelings, and so if we're able to feel them and be present in them, I mean, it was a complete game changer for me. That's what really allowed me to find, I guess, freedom on that.
Yeah. And the goal is to be able to allow these urges without acting on them 100 times, being able to tolerate these negative emotions and build that strength and skill of tolerating negative emotions. Usually, when we're going to pornography or other things, we're trying to escape a negative emotion. So instead, we're trying to just deal with it. So then we go through this model called the state fair model. And I'm actually going to you're going to have a link to this, but a different, like you'll do this in the app itself, but just so we can type into it and you can see it. We're going to share something else. There we go. And you'll have a link to this as well. But first off, we start with the situation. So yeah, Sam's going to kind of run through it, and I'll just kind of be typing as he goes, just to give you an example of what you would actually put into this model in your app.
Perfect. Okay, so the situation that I have recorded is just remembering some of the spam things in my email. You always get some of those. I had seen those, and I started to remember a couple of those when they were there, right?
Yeah. So spam email with sexual content.
And so then once you do that, and the whole reality, the reason why we go through the feeling first is because it gives you more time, right? It slows down the process, changes your perspective. That way we're able to then go in and challenge the thought process that kind of make us feel that way, if I'm right, Mike.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So the first skill is being able to tolerate this negative emotion. The next skill is being able to figure out, oh, like where did all that come from? Some arousal is like pretty natural. You see something, you become aroused. But a lot of times what drove you to look at pornography in the first place was maybe you were actually sad about something that went wrong at work, or you were anxious about, an upcoming test or something at work or whatever. So what we're trying to do is figure out, oh, like, was there something in the back there that was maybe pulling this up?
Right. And so once you do write down your situation and you go through the thought that's driving that. And so for me, I was kind of wondering, right, if there would be anything that would be exciting. If I was to find, any pornography there, it would be interesting, right? It'd be interesting to me. I guess I was pretty bored at that moment.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you noticed the feeling was bored. Great. Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts that were kind of coming up at that time?
The other thought was some shame as well, and I think that's important to know, especially with when we're looking at our urges. Usually, it's always connected with either shame or fears or something negative that way.
Yeah. Good. So, and the shame and fear came from maybe like, I shouldn't look at this. It's not good to look at this. And these seem like good thoughts, but what they bring up is shame, right? And fear. Oh, I shouldn't look at it. I shouldn't look at it. And then what do you end up doing often when you feel that?
So often you just dive deeper, right? You white knuckle. You're like, oh man, I shouldn't do this, and it just drives you to the act. Try to go, actually do it.
Yeah, like I can do this. I can get through it, and then eventually you kind of don't, right? You end up watching pornography or looking at it or opening the email or whatever.
Right.
And this is what I think is most important, is to realize why does, you're saying I shouldn't look at it, but why do you go ahead and do it? Like, what's the intention there? Yeah. And really, it's to escape the negative emotion, right? Like you feel this shame and fear, all that build up. And like when you look at pornography or you masturbate or you eat a treat or whatever, like you do feel better for a little while. It really does work for a little bit. But you see, if we can get to these thoughts, so we're not triggering shame and fear, like we won't have that need to escape the negative emotion. And that's really the core of this whole thing. Like instead of being like, oh, I have to escape it and pornography is going to help me escape it, or food or whatever, right, is going to help me escape it. First we say, look, I'm okay to feel this. It's not going to kill me. And I can also look at these thoughts and figure out like, a new thought. And we'll get into that next. But anyway, you end up giving in and all that. And then what's the end result from, telling yourself you shouldn't, but then doing it anyway?
Yeah. It's like fighting to not lose, right? Instead of playing to win, is what I found. And you end up white knuckling it, and you go. I went to those that spam email or whatnot.
Yeah. So you end up looking at it, and then you end up feeling even more shame, or guilt, all of that, right? So
Mhm.
back into this, and that's what's so hard about pornography and other things like that. You feel bad about it, but then oh, if I use pornography or if I overeat, that'll help me feel better. And it does for a little, but then just feeds this whole thing just over and over again. And that's what's hard, but we can break out of it for sure.
And cool thing about the entire process of the state fair model is that you can catch, if the whole goal is to catch your feeling early. That way you can kind of look before you go into the result and catch yourself in this particular example, right? Doing this, the process at the beginning and catching it while you're feeling those things and being able to sit in it allows you to, like I said earlier, change your perspective, slow things down, so that way you can challenge your thoughts and create a new thought through a new state fair model.
Exactly. So we'll go into that next. So a lot of times at first, when you're first doing this, it's going to be a little bit difficult. And then as you do it more, you'll notice patterns in your thinking. Then you can start kind of inserting new patterns that are going to be more helpful. And those become default over time, but you have to practice them. It takes repetition. That's why this app will help you do it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Get your brain to that better spot. So situations again, spam email with sexual content. So like for you, so you said you had an example of like a new one, or kind of where you would send your mind instead.
Yeah. So what I found that has been really helpful is the thought that I could totally go look at that folder. That's an option, right? I could go take a look at that. But would it help me in going back to my integrity, right? Going back to remembering why, I was processing urges at the beginning.
Yeah.
In
So
the long run, that's not going to help me connect, right, with my future life. It's not going to.
right. Yeah. And then great. So you ask yourself that question instead of going, oh no, don't look, I shouldn't look, right? Just like, look, I could, but is it getting me where I want? Awesome. And then the answer is pretty clearly no. But what's the feeling that comes up when you're able to kind of ask yourself that, instead of like, oh, don't look.
Yeah, yeah. In this particular example, it was like realign, right? And that was just strong. Uh, I found that even going through and noticing where those new feelings are too can be so helpful to remember them.
Yeah.
I felt that strong in my chest, as well as I felt free, right?
Awesome. Great. And so then, same situation, right? But the feeling's so different, right? Because you sent your brain to a different place. And so you see this spam email. What did you end up doing when you were able to send your mind to that place instead?
Yeah, yeah. So the action instead was just making a plan for the day and getting going. Just there's some boredom there, and once you do, I didn't have a plan at the time. Once I made a plan, that made it a lot easier.
Cool. Awesome. Did you end up looking at the email?
On this particular check-in, I allowed my urge without acting on it, which is awesome.
Cool. So, didn't open email. Any intention there? What would you say the intention was as you were kind of going?
Yeah, kind of going back to that whole concept of just living free, right? I want to live free
Yeah.
and live in my integrity.
Awesome. Love it. Great. And so the result ended up being
I'm free, right? I live my integrity. That going on my day.
yeah, so cool. So this is the power of it. I'm glad we went through this. Is a great example, Sam. Thanks for bringing it up and going through it. I think a lot of people will be able to relate to this. What I want to just draw attention to is it comes back to like this whole thing, right? A lot of times with addiction things or like breaking bad habits, we focus all in here, right? Well, I just have to not do it. Just don't do it, right? But we all know that doesn't work. Like we have to look at this whole thing, we got to look at this whole thing. Because when you feel aligned, strong, and free, you don't need to escape that emotion. That emotion feels good. But when you're feeling bored, shameful, fearful, you have the desire to escape it. We're working on that desire in itself, right? Because You don't want that. You want to be able to tolerate that without giving in. But then when you look back, you can send yourself quicker to, instead of, no, don't look at this, it's not good, I've done it a bunch of times, I don't want to do it again, right? And then that fires up shame and fear that makes you want to look at pornography or read or whatever even more. That's what we're trying to literally hammer in here. Versus if you can send your brain to a better spot, like, sure, I could look at pornography, I could overeat, but is that how I want to use my sexuality? Is that how I want to use food? Whatever. You want to live in integrity, and that feels good. It feels strong. And you're on your way to, like Sam said, freedom. That's what this whole app and everything's about. We want you to feel that freedom. Yeah, I mean, Sam, like, what's the whole experience been like? Are you at 100 now? What are you at these days?
Yeah. So I've processed, since we haven't had the tracking of the app, I've had it a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
But I'm positive that I've processed 100 urges.
Yeah.
And what I found that's been really cool is just the ability, like what's helped me a ton is just being able to process it immediately. And hey, just having compassion on yourself, not looking at it as so much of like, man, I've got to go. I've got to do this 100 times, 100 days consecutively or whatever. No, you gotta, take yourself one day at a time still. But one urge at a time, just process it. And if, you do end up acting on that urge, if you do end up eating, whatever it might be, overeating or viewing pornography or whatnot, that's okay. Just learn from it, continue it, and with time those patterns are going to come. That's what I found more than anything. And just changing the whole thought process is awesome. Like this prayer model is huge. I know these tools work.
Yeah, it's thanks for sharing that. It's exciting. I mean, I think you've said, just you feel so much more free. We started working on this, what's it been now, like probably a year and a half, maybe like a year now. Like,
Yeah.
a year ago compared to now, like how different is it? Like how much more free are you?
Yeah. So I when I got in with Mike, I had no hope about anything. My urges and, like, I guess they just taken control over pretty much everything, every aspect and facet of my life. Um, my confidence was not high because I couldn't trust myself. I couldn't live my integrity, like we talked about at the beginning. Now looking back, going through now, um, I'm super confident in my ability to change and define freedom, and that's the most liberating thing ever, is being able to trust yourself. And yeah, and those were feelings of hopelessness and depression and just anxiety and just that pit of despair is just replaced with a feeling of just, hey, I can take on the world, and I can, when you're found with a problem, you feel optimistic about it, more so, and that carries over to almost everything. That's with, like, relationships, that's with school, that's with work. I've found a lot of comfort and just a lot of strength through this whole process to find lasting freedom, right?
Awesome. That's what we want for you guys too. That's what it's about, and we hope you enjoy it. We'll have like a support email on there for you to contact us if you have questions. And just best of luck. And like Sam said, if you do, if you do have the urge and act on it, it's not an issue, right? Still come back to here, still process it, learn from it. What were the thoughts that were going on? And, how can you kind of shift those up, notice the patterns, and then get to that 100, you're going to feel much lighter, more free, more empowered than probably ever have. So we're excited for you.